I'm always hungry. Censor Stamira. Russia has really crossed the line this time. Russia has once again violated NATO airspace, continuing to provoke the alliance. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get right into it. On September 19th, 3 Russian fighter jets entered Estonian airspace, a NATO member. This is the third incident in a week after airspace violations in Poland, Romania, and now Estonia. 3 Russian Air Force MiG-31 jets entered Estonian airspace from the Gulf of Finland, stayed for 12 minutes, and went up to 9 kilometers in. The Italian Air Force, already on a nearby mission, quickly sent F-35 jets after Estonia's request. At that time, Russia acted threateningly, flying just 22 kilometers from Tallinn, Estonia's capital. To put it in Korean terms, it's like flying from Bucheon. At that time, the Italian Air Force was deployed instead because Estonia has a small military and doesn't even have fighter jets. That's why the Italian Air Force was sent in. The Russian fighter jets had no flight plan and their satellite transponders were off. They ignored Estonia's air traffic control, disregarding all contact attempts and proceeding with the provocation. NATO strongly condemned Russia, saying that this incident is yet another example of Russia's reckless behavior and also demonstrates NATO's ability to respond. Russia rarely enters another country's airspace. Until now, they could just send drones and call it a mistake. This time, a manned aircraft was used in a clear provocation. Marus Chakna, Estonia's foreign minister, said Russia violated Estonian airspace 4 times this year, but the recent entry of 3 fighter jets was the boldest yet. He said we must increase pressure on Russia in response to its provocations, as the Russian military entered Estonian airspace. Also, Article 4 of NATO was invoked. NATO Article 4 allows a member to request emergency talks if its security, independence, or territory is threatened. Since NATO's founding, Article 4 was invoked only 6 times by 2025, but 3 times in 1 week, highlighting Russia's growing provocations, which NATO sees as a threat. President Trump of the United States also expressed his dissatisfaction, saying that Russian fighter jets violating Estonian airspace could become a serious issue. Later, Russia responded by claiming that they did not violate Estonian airspace with their fighter jets. Russia added that its fighter jets were flying over neutral waters in the Baltic while moving from northwestern Russia to Kaliningrad. There are growing predictions that the anxiety of the Baltic states is likely to increase even further in the future. A recent Reuters report says the United States is reviewing plans to suspend some security support for the Baltic states. United States Department of Defense officials reportedly told European diplomats in informal meetings that Europe should stop relying so much on the United States for security. The United States emphasized that Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia bordering Russia should take responsibility and cover the costs for their own defense. The United States has consistently supplied the Baltic states with air defense systems, radar equipment, and rapid response force training. However, if these discussions become a reality, such support could be reduced in the short term, and the security gap faced by the Baltic states is expected to be significant. The shift in the United States' stance could significantly affect NATO, extending past just halting military tech support. The Baltic states, due to their geopolitical location, are the region most likely to be exposed to Russian pressure at any time. In fact, with tensions rising as Russian fighter jets and drones have repeatedly violated the airspace of this region recently, the United States making such a decision can only serve to further amplify the anxiety of these countries. Furthermore, the change in the United States' attitude is raising a fundamental question among its allies. Will the United States really protect us to the end in a crisis? For Poland and the Baltic states, with their history of being caught between powerful nations, even minor doubts about their alliance cause intense anxiety. This recent move by the United States is precisely touching on those sensitive nerves. It seems that the United States' underlying intention is based on calculations of prioritizing its own interests and redistributing its defense resources. The United States has recently been emphasizing homeland defense and strategic priorities in the Asia-Pacific region, and as a result, it is clearly showing a tendency to reduce excessive burdens on the European front. However, for the Baltic states, this essentially means that they will have to stand alone in the face of the Russian threat. This could deepen distrust and division within NATO, which is exactly what Russia wants. The Baltic states will push for a stronger military response, while Western Europe will likely be more cautious, possibly widening their divide. Russia appears to be targeting this point and steadily increasing provocations. There is growing analysis that this incident is not simply an accidental situation, but rather a deliberately calculated provocation by Russia. Since the Ukraine war, Russia has repeatedly shown its military strength in Eastern Europe. Not only the airspace violations using fighter jets, but also the repeated sending of drones to Poland and Romania are being evaluated as actions that go beyond simple military threats. The purpose is reportedly to test the effectiveness of NATO's air defense, their response speed, and willingness to shoot down intrusions. Well, the real issue is the conflict within NATO, as Eastern and Western European countries are clearly divided. The Eastern European side, including Poland and the Baltic states, is taking a hardline stance, insisting that fighter jets should be shot down immediately upon intrusion. Recently, as the United States has shown signs of reducing its support for the Baltic states, instability in the region has grown even further. This is why Eastern European countries must take a tougher stance. In contrast, Western European countries like the United Kingdom, France, and Germany remain more cautious. They worry that a hardline approach to Russia might cause uncontrollable escalation. Amid fears of full-scale war, these countries prefer to manage the situation through dialogue. As the differences in perspectives between the two sides become increasingly clear, a collective response at the NATO level is being delayed. Eastern European countries want decisive action, while Western European countries remain cautious. NATO continues to issue vague warnings and keep limited forces deployed. Because of this, some people are even saying that if Russia were to actually invade the Baltic states, NATO might hesitate and fail to intervene. Russia is actively taking advantage of this gap. They're exposing divisions in the alliance and showing the world that NATO can't speak with one voice. Ultimately, this incident isn't just about fighter jets violating airspace. It's testing the entire European security order. If this situation continues, there is a possibility that each country will shift to a system where they defend themselves independently. European countries are already discussing independent nuclear armament. For example, Poland's World War II trauma stems from Britain and France's delayed military intervention, which left the nation devastated. Without guaranteed military support from allies, they can't help but feel very anxious. As a result, countries like Britain, France, and Germany are deploying fighter jets to Poland and trying to reassure Eastern European countries, but even so, the anxiety among Eastern European countries is not being eased much. Several scenarios are being discussed about future developments, including Russia potentially escalating its provocations. If acts like airspace violations or drone intrusions continue to happen repeatedly and the intensity keeps increasing, there's a risk that a localized conflict could break out. If the Baltic states or Poland shot down a Russian fighter jet, it would inevitably cause military tensions. NATO cannot tolerate a situation where the security of its member states is threatened, so it's highly likely that they would deploy additional fighter jets and troops, at least as a minimal response. This trend could turn a small clash into a regional conflict. Another possibility is that NATO overcomes internal divisions and presents a more unified voice. Eastern and Western Europe are split between hardline and cautious responses, but if the United States and major European countries coordinate and set shared principles, Russia's pressure could be greatly reduced. Since Russia is strategically taking advantage of NATO's conflicts, the more the alliance strengthens its internal unity, the less effective Russia's provocations will be. Especially if NATO goes so far as to officially invoke Article 5, the Collective Defense Clause, Russia will have no choice but to refrain from taking risky actions. Ultimately, it depends on the alliance's unity. Overall, it is expected that future developments will be determined by the interplay of three factors: the level of Russia's provocations, NATO's internal cohesion, and the direction of United States policy. If any of these factors become unstable, European security could become unpredictable. Future developments will likely test both military issues and broader changes in international politics. Russia is deliberately provoking NATO, violating airspace 3 times in 1 week with increasing provocations. What else could happen in the future? Share your thoughts in the comments. That's the end of this video. Thank you.